All right. Hello, folks. I am Ab Kujawa, Director of Malwarebytes Labs here at Malwarebytes, and today we are going to be talking about um, basically Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is this month. All right. In Cybersecurity Awareness Month, every single week has a theme, and that theme is something involving cybersecurity, basically. So we can take a look down here at my chart or my whiteboard of amazingness, and you can see that we've got it listed out. The first week, somebody messed these around for me. I do apologize. It's probably our guy Josh, our cameraman and producer. Anyway, so the first week is to make a haven, your home a haven for online security. And by the way, you can go on our blog and basically find out about all of these different themes, and we have links back to blog posts that would be very useful if you want to try to share them and educate your friends and family. So, on week 2, the theme is millions of rewarding jobs educating for a career in cybersecurity. Week 3, it's everyone's job to ensure online safety at work. And week 4, safeguarding the nation's critical infrastructures. So, we are going to be talking about just week 3. It's everyone's job to ensure online safety at work. And that is absolutely true. And so to do that, we're going to be talking about quite a few different topics here, including basically why these attacks happen, what you could do as a company to secure your data, secure your systems and your endpoints, as well as secure your employees. So, first of all, why do these attacks happen? Why are businesses targeted at all for cyber attacks? Now, this seems like a really simple question to answer, and it is. It's because businesses are, first of all, networked. You've got a whole lot of systems combined together, making attacks really effective when you're able to actually breach the network and traverse through it. There's more money to be taken, basically. For the intellectual property, user credentials, things like that can all be extorted from companies if that data is leaked or stolen somehow. Oftentimes, you've got kind of the double side of you've got more security in general, or at least more resources for security for businesses because they have IT teams, security teams, they have to protect this stuff. Whereas a consumer wouldn't have that particular resources available to them. However, they're only looking at one computer. So a kind of flaw in this is that, yes, we have better solutions for security if you're a business, but there's more things to monitor and therefore more opportunities for bad guys to somehow break in. So next up, let's talk about a few different attack types and how to protect against them. So number 1, we're going to talk about cloud-based attacks. So what does this mean, cloud-based attacks? Well, there's lots of different terms that you could use for this kind of stuff, but in the basic sense of the word, any sort of cloud services that you utilize at your business in order to get your work done. This could be anywhere from like a Dropbox or Box or any sort of file storage, cloud file storage system, social media, some method of communication remotely. There's a lot of different tools out there that lots of people from sales to marketing use in order to get their work done. And most of the stuff is cloud-based, so you can access it from anywhere. Now that makes a whole lot of sense from a security point of view, or at least a productivity point of view, but from a security point of view, maybe not so much, because bad guys are completely aware of the issue right now of a lot of people utilizing these services. And if you're going after an organization, you're going to want to try to get them to give you credentials or access to those cloud services, or use those cloud services in order to actually do the attack. So what you can see from a cloud attack would be simple things like spear phishing, getting an email from the provider asking for a password reset, and maybe even a file to be downloaded. I mean, this is common malicious spam stuff. It's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility. You must also have social engineering issues, as in you might get a phone call from someone claiming to be there we go, claiming to be someone from a particular cloud service, saying, hey, you need to reset your password or your bill's due or blah, blah, blah. The key here is to be completely aware of these threats and know how to deal with them. So in order to protect yourself from these kinds of threats, we recommend, first of all, any cloud service you use two-factor authentication. A big old 2FA. Okay? Now that is so important. And you know what? A lot of services these days don't offer this. More and more are, which is great. You know, cloud service is fantastic. And two-factor authentication is fantastic. So you got a phone, you got anything like that, you can use it in order to have additional security added to your account. If you are a company that has access to cloud servers and your employees do as well, make sure every single one of them is allowed to use two-factor authentication. Otherwise, it makes it a really juicy target. The next thing is kind of limiting the access to what information is available to whom. Back when I worked for the government, this is something that was just commonplace. But today in corporate America, and you often see things like anybody having access to whatever they need. And that makes sense, especially if you're a small organization. But the larger you get, the more you have to section this data, the more you have to limit the access that everyone has, because the data becomes harder to track, harder to keep, secure. So we recommend that if you have 15 employees who do not need access to all of your customer billing information, maybe don't give them access to it, because any one of those employees could get compromised, and then their account access can be used in order to steal that data. And finally, encrypt, encrypt, encrypt. I mean, there's lots of other things we could spend an hour talking about how to stay safe from this kind of threat. But we got to move on. But for the most part, encrypt. If you have a password manager, if you have a cloud service that's backing up files, encrypt all of it. Make sure you use ones that use heavy encryption, that even the creators and the owners of the business that you are using, of the actual cloud service, cannot access it. There are a few services out there that claim they can do this, so I would recommend doing your research. I'm not going to make any recommendations, but as long as you find a provider that encrypts and that can keep these things secure even from their own employees, then you're good. So moving on from talking about cloud attacks, and this actually doesn't completely move on because we're still going to be talking about malicious spam here. And what malicious spam is, for those of you that may not know, it's basically phishing attacks, talking about how we get emails that say, we're from this, we're from that, download this file, click on this link, give us your password, let us infect you, we're actually very friendly people. That's what a lot of these emails say. For businesses, you have the unfortunate side effect of dealing with both the kind of spam junk that a lot of users get and how a lot of malware is distributed, like Emotet and a lot of different kinds of ransomware in the past. But you also have to worry about spear phishing emails. So spear phishing, for those of you that don't know, is, and I do apologize for my terrible handwriting. I'm not a doctor, but I should have been. So spear phishing basically is like regular phishing, plus something that is more alluring, something that is personal. So we'll put plus personal info. And this doesn't necessarily have to be personal info. I've seen cases where spear phishing attacks have been for pay increases for the year, holidays, etc. Once again, I apologize for my terrible handwriting. There we go. Holiday. And other things like that. Stuff that really someone sees on an email and they're like, wow, I want to look at that right now. So it could be that, like I said, a pay chart for next year. What are you going to be making next year? Especially if you work in the government and you've got these regular pay scales. You could do the same thing with tax documents. You could do the same thing with, hey, everyone, please RSVP to this. Click this link here in order to get a free iPad or for the company or something like that. The possibilities are really endless. And attackers utilize spear phishing because it makes the attack seem more legitimate. Okay, they may come from a source that you recognize. They may be talking about a topic or subject that you are interested in or currently working with or on. And so by taking advantage of that, it obviously makes it less of an effective attack against the wider, trying to cast a net, but it makes it far more dangerous attack when you're going after an individual or a group of individuals. And a lot of this information that's used in these spear phishing attacks isn't just pulled out of the air. I mean, social media, other documents, the website itself of the company could be another way in which these attackers are getting information. If you take a look at your corporate website, how many emails are on there? You know, do a search for the top people in your organization on Google or on whatever search engine you want to use, looking for their email. See if it pops up anywhere, because then you'll know that's out there. And if it's out there, then bad guys can find it and they can target that email. This is how a lot of CFO and CEO fraud happens, where they're like, hey, we have a wire transfer, please approve. And it turns out sending thousands of dollars to an attacker. And this has happened a few times to different organizations over the years. So how do you stay protected, or how do you keep your networks protected from malicious emails? First of all, you're going to want to check to see, is the sender address even correct? Okay, double check that. If you think it's coming from tomjones@yahoo.com, then you need to take a look and say, wait, is that actually Tom Jones at Yahoo, or is it tomjones.yahoo.et or something? It's totally possible these days, and I hope I'm not getting anyone ideas, but really possible to craft these kind of email addresses that look so legitimate and so real, but in reality are just scams. Second, you want to see, do I even know the sender? Okay, if this is coming from your boss, then yeah, you're going to think you know him. But if it's coming from, Jesse out in HR, do you know Jesse? Do you know anything about them? Sometimes it's worth just reaching out to the people who you think are trying to reach out to you and confirming that they want something. Now, this is obviously a huge pain, so there should be other things that kind of raise your suspicion. You shouldn't have to call every single person that sends an email to you. So the next thing to check for is any embedded links that are weird. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's go to our wonderful whiteboard where I can show you my elegant handwriting. And so let's say you've got an email message, all right? Let's just say this. Hi, please click for money. I mean, they're far more sophisticated than that, but honestly, if you go back in time, they're not all that different. And this is a link, okay? So you just hover over this link with your mouse, and on the bottom, usually you can see, what's the URL? Where is it trying to go to? Bad guy. That's my go-to domain, badguy.com. So yeah, you hover over this, it shows you, oh, I'm going to badguy.com. I don't want to go there. Now this is kind of a simple example. What if the same thing happens? However, I'm going to use a different marker for this. It says some random link, like I don't know, eBay / blah 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 blah. So I mean, regardless, this all looks legitimate, and it's still a link. Okay, so the attacker expects for the user to go and click on this, thinking that ebay.com is the actual domain of where it's going. But if you hovered over this, it would still point back to badguy.com. So always check links before you click on them inside of an email. They don't happen often enough to be an issue where every single second you're going to have to be checking links. All you have to do is hover over them, and it'll give you some idea of where it's going to be going. If you don't recognize the domain, if the email says that it's coming from a legitimate service, but the link says something else, don't trust it. Maybe talk to a security person. Moving on. The other thing you need to look out for is basic things that you see in a lot of phishing attacks. This is spelling errors. This is, weird grammar, the way the punctuation, even the spacing of documents. Honestly, over the last few years, a lot of these things have become incredibly sophisticated, incredibly realistic. I've seen phishing attacks that look exactly like you would see from an official organization, coming from an email that looks incredibly official, and the only way I knew that it was not legitimate was because I hovered over the link and it said something other than what I expected. And I mean, it's that difficult sometimes. And then finally, like I said before, just kind of realize that most services out there, most companies, organizations, things like that, especially if they hold on to sensitive information, like banks, they're not going to just reach out to you and say, "Hey, please reset your password" for no reason. They usually will send that kind of email if you request it, and then the email itself will say, "If you didn't request this, please click here," and maybe somebody's trying to break into your account. So just double check. It's worth taking some time to just make sure that you're not going to be clicking on or entering credentials for anything that you aren't 100% sure is secure. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about instant messaging security. Now, all this stuff is kind of outside of the realm of what we normally talk about, but in reality, if you're thinking about businesses, you're thinking about operational security, you're going to want to make sure that, you're going to want to make sure that everything from not just your endpoints, but also how your employees communicate with each other are secured. And that means that using some kind of, over-the-counter, non-encrypted, non-secure messaging app is not ideal. If your primary method of communication between your employees is like a cell phone call or a text message, those things can be intercepted. Those things can be collected, not just by government organizations and whatnot, but by actual attackers. They can clone your SIM card and actually pretend to be you in some cases. So you need to go a step further than that, all right? More than text messages. There are lots of apps out there that utilize end-to-end encryption. WhatsApp is one that I know, one that I use. I know there are other ones, and probably far more secure ones as well, but that one's kind of easy. So make sure you want to look into those. In addition to that, the actual devices that your employees are using to communicate with each other, like their phones, if you have the resources for it, provide company-owned phones or devices of any kind. That way you can ensure that these phones are up to par as far as security goes. They have their latest updates, they have all the security software you want on them, and they're only used for official use. Okay, so it's less likely you're going to see a bunch of games or things like that popping up on these phones. If you do have a phone policy, that should probably be on there. Do not install games. So another thing to worry about or think about when it comes to this kind of end-to-end encryption communication stuff, do your employees even know the importance of this? It could come down to them not realizing that just by texting someone a password or the account number for your company's bank, they are potentially putting your entire organization at risk because that information is not very well secured. So make sure that you communicate with your company, with your employees, and tell them the importance of making sure you use some kind of encrypted messaging service, of being careful about what they write and what they send to each other. And then, of course, this is kind of outside of this scope a little bit, but at the end of the day, we want to worry about what they post on social media as well. Now, you shouldn't have to go out there and assign someone in your organization to just keep an eye on everyone's social media, but to spread the education that social media can be used to extract phone numbers in some cases, to extract emails, to extract relevant and meaningful data and information about you or your organization that can use in a spear phishing attack. So this kind of education is really important for users, not just about how to use the secure apps, but why as well, and what the importance of it is. So I talked about staff training when it came to instant messaging and stuff. This stuff is just really important, and just to kind of finish off this topic, it is incredibly important because of not just the high amount of remote workers that we have these days, but a lot of people on the go. I work out of our headquarters here at Malwarebytes, but I'm traveling a lot, and I have my phone with me. I need to communicate with my team members or my boss or anything like that on the fly, and while I'm flying sometimes. So it's just incredibly important to know and spread the information around about securing this kind of communication. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about as far as securing things go are remote workers, because we already kind of mentioned remote workers. Now, many of you probably have no idea, but I worked remote for 5 years for Malwarebytes, okay? And that was a challenge in its own, okay? There's lots of ups and downs, there's lots of benefits and drawbacks to working remotely. It's a whole different kind of, mentality you have to have in order to be an effective worker in that kind of environment. But some of the biggest, obviously, holes and issues with having a remote working workforce is that you've got this information that has to be publicly available basically anywhere in the world. Okay, some organizations, if they only have all their stuff inside a single building or a single data center or something like that, they can control access to that information far more securely because they could physically keep it off of the internet and just have it only accessible from their internal network or VPN or something like that. And in a lot of cases, organizations do that, but more and more we see people heading toward the cloud security thing. So this kind of all wraps around to what we saw before. And I'm going to draw a picture about it. So the cloud security, let's just draw a cloud. This is a terrible cloud. I'm so sorry. It looks like a nose. Let's give little eyes. There we go. So we've got the issue of having remote workers. So let's just have this guy. He's a remote worker. How do we know he's a remote worker? Because he's not wearing any pants. And everyone knows that remote workers don't wear pants. This is this is a common truth. So these guys, they're going to be accessing the cloud services. The bad guys, and that's just his happy face or unhappy face right here, mean guy, he identifies that. He sees that this is happening and then sends out a spear phishing attack against your workers. And this attack, let's just make it like an email. It looks like an email here with a unhappy face. So they send the spear phishing attack to your network, to anyone else. It may come to your remote person, or it may come to your local person. The local person right here thinking they're totally secure and safe on the corporate network. They have nothing to worry about. They're just rainbows and sunshine. They get this spear phishing email. They see it and are like, oh, wow, I guess this is important because I need to connect to this cloud service. So they provide their credentials or they give it up. Suddenly the attacker's on the network. Now the attacker, using this person's not happy anymore. They're very sad. The rainbow is gone, the red rainbow. So this guy now, he's infected. Your corporate network is infected, and now this guy's email account is sending emails to the rest of the company, right? And these are all just methods of spreading the malware, spreading the threat around, seeing what other access it has. One of these emails comes back to this remote dude who's completely unaware of anything going on locally. They may have informed, this guy would have been like, hey, I saw something to the IT team. The IT team is still investigating. They haven't sent out any kind of message. Sorry, there's my unhappy hacker. They haven't sent out a message or something. The news about this particular threat spreading is not something that that everyone's going to get immediately. So this dude thinks it's a legitimate email from this guy, and he clicks it, which then enters another bad guy who's able to break into the network, or another endpoint that's compromised. And now this guy starts sending out emails, et cetera, or text messages or something. And you're not sure where it's coming from. You're not sure if it's legitimate. But regardless, this is kind of how it all happens. This is one way that a lot of this stuff happens. 1 second, folks. Make sure that you lock your computer as often as possible. Make sure that your timeout for locking your computer happens probably after a few minutes of inactivity. And if it's especially a business computer or something, make sure you have passwords on it, that you have to unlock the computer with a password. This is kind of out of what we're talking about, but since I had to unlock my computer right now, it's probably good to share that information with you. In the lightest sense of the word, I've seen people utilize someone's unlocked system to send a funny email or do something silly. The more likely and less funny side to this is that if you leave an unlocked computer, it's like your desk is close to the front office door or something like that. You don't want anyone having access to your system, and if you keep it unlocked, that just gives them access if they want. So just FYI, keep it locked. So how do you secure these remote workers? Well, I mean, the whole point really is that first of all, the VPN, and as I mentioned before, using a VPN or some sort of service that can help put your remote employees onto the corporate network so they can access secured and physically, secured servers and tools and things like that is really important. I mean, we do that here. We've been doing that since day one. Next, there are a lot of benefits to these cloud services, especially for remote people. So make sure that all those guys, they're using 2FA, they are aware of all these threats. They need this education as much as anybody else. Another thing to worry about when it comes to remote workers is making sure that they are physically secure as well. Most people don't think about this. You think, well, that computer's out there in the world. Obviously, it's if I have a VPN or if I use the right cloud services, it's going to be secured. And if I'm using the right software, it's going to be secured. But at the end of the day, how many of you have heard about, a few years ago, some person working for the government left their laptop in their car and it got stolen. And that laptop had millions of records from the Office of Personnel Management, including probably mine. And so that's how silly is that, But think about it. You've got a home and your home office is there. Is it secure enough? Do you have locks on your office doors? Do you put your laptop away at the end of the day, or you just leave it there? If someone breaks into your house, will they be able to steal your equipment? Will they be able to access any of that data? So think about that kind of stuff, especially for a remote worker. And think, as safe as you think you are in your own home, the reality is that this is valuable information. It has to be secured regardless where it is. If you lived at the bottom of the sea in a bunker, I would still say lock your computer, use two-factor authentication, and make sure you have physical security on your devices. So let's stop talking about attacks and start asking questions of ourselves, okay? First of all, we need a security stance. If you are an organization that does not have security stance, here's how you make one. Okay, here's at least the questions you need to ask and answers you need to get so you can start working on one. From a business standpoint, what are the big questions? The first one being, what needs protecting, right? Do you need to protect your database of user credentials? Obviously. Do you need to protect your database of funny GIFs? Maybe not. So knowing exactly what information is out there and what information needs to be protected more than others is the first place to start. All right, secure those user credentials, secure that confidential information, more so than anything else. Okay, at the very least, even if you do get breached, a bad guy's going to have a harder time breaking through that security. So let me do a little picture of this, because I really like this topic personally, and I'm not sure how much time we have left, if we have any time left, or if anyone's there watching, but I hope you are. So this is a concept that I haven't explained in a while, but it is incredibly important. Here's your network, okay? Let's say here's your personal info, right here. This is the data that you want to secure. Secure data, okay? And this is sitting on multiple. This is sitting on right at this moment, let's say, in this theoretical explanation, this is sitting on a bunch of servers, just file servers, okay? Generic file servers, just FS. They have basic security, but this database or this file is also on the same thing as, like I said, the GIFs or maybe birthdays, things like that. I mean, stuff that isn't really important, okay? So when a bad guy attempts to break into this network, whatever method they use, they go straight here, they break into this file server, suddenly, yeah, they don't need that, yeah, they don't need that, and they take your secure data, okay? So this is an issue that is easily fixed. Well, maybe not easily, but can be. And this is how you do it, okay? Let's start off with the bad guy. Right here, Mr. Bad Guy, weird face, tries to attack a network, okay? Now, your network doesn't look like that before. Your network doesn't just have a single file server or anything like that. You've got multiple, okay? So here's like the web server. Let's say they use a SQL attack and somehow break into your web server and then are able to traverse through your internal network that way. Or to your border router and into the network. So this is the network. Okay. Now, if the attacker wants to gain access to whatever is out there, the base network, let's just make this kind of this is the network. This is all the connection. Here are devices on the network. These are computers. These are laptops. These are phones. And this big one right here is a file server. Okay, this file, oops, I can't hold on to this pen, I apologize. It's too slippy. So this file server, it has the gifts, it has the birthdays. You can make another file server over here, and this has other information that really isn't relevant to, holidays, things like that. Stuff that is not proprietary information, stuff that doesn't need to be secured. Now, where is your secure information at this point, and how do your users access it? Well, your secure information, let's say, is off of one of these nodes here, where you've got, oh, you guys can't even see that, can you? Maybe. Anyway, you've got an additional file server that's connected to additional security, like another router or a firewall or something. And behind this is a gate. Okay, so your users, in order to access this and access this information, need to use two-factor authentication. They need to use a VPN, all kinds of stuff that may possibly be required in order to gain access to this file server of secure data. SecDat. So the attacker, after they break into your main network, they see all that's out there, and at this point, what are they going to do? They're going to steal this information. They're going to try to get to this data, but it's going to be a lot harder with this layout than it would be with the previous one. And in many cases, bad guys are after the low-hanging fruit. They want the easy attack, and they were not going to put in the hours and hours or days or weeks of effort in order to break through this security and get to this data. All right, so segmenting your data is incredibly important when it comes to keeping hackers away from it. And I think that's something that a lot of organizations are still trying to figure out. Probably one of the reasons that we see so many breaches over the last few years is because this concept is not followed. This concept is just foreign to people. Segmenting data, segmenting information, and segmenting access. I mean, this all sounds like it's real overly paranoid stuff, but at the end of the day, would you rather be the person who's overly paranoid right now and make sure all their data is secure and their customers are happy, or be the guy who doesn't care about security right now and then has to deal with it in a rush after all his customers have left because he let his data vanish, right, or be breached? What kind of damage could the threats do? That's another question we have to ask ourselves. If you get breached, is it what's the fallout from this particular kind of attack? And do I have the right technology to protect my data? So at this point, look at the potential avenues of entry for your organization. Is it through your users? Is it through your border router or your web server? Are you running a database online? Is there any access at all into your internal network from the outside? And if there is it monitored? Is it secured? So after you identified what data needs to be secure, what could happen to that data if an attacker gets their hands on it, then you have to decide, do you have the right tech to protect that data? And then finally, should you expect your employees to help you out in mitigating these risks? This is an important concept too, because like I said, we talked about malicious email, we talked about spear phishing, and social engineering in general, but it's the primary method of spreading malware these days is to basically, instead of breaking through the security of a network, which sometimes is easy because of vulnerabilities or misconfigured servers and things like that, but most of the time it's through the bad guys who are just sending an email to one of your employees, and your employees clicks on the link or opens a file, game over. Okay, so including your employees in your security plan is just as important. All right, you can't just have your 5 IT guys or 2 security people or whatever you have as the only people monitoring and looking out for attacks. Every single person or organization today needs to keep an eye out for those things. And hopefully some of the stuff that we mentioned when talking about how to recognize a malicious email will come into play. So let's ask ourselves some technology questions. What area of my security posture are not well protected? So like I mentioned before, you need to identify what data needs to be secured, how to secure it, et cetera, et cetera. But is there anything else? Is there any other way to get into your network? Hire a pen testing company or do your own audits or something like that. Make sure that if the least open, the least obvious entry into your network is closed. Because like I said, bad guys, they like low-hanging fruit. And if they see that you haven't updated your SMB server so that you can get hit with the Eternal Blue exploit, or you have a vulnerability in RDP that you haven't patched or secured in some way, and attackers use it to install SamSam ransomware, I mean, this kind of stuff happens all the time. And do you have the right tools to deploy this protection is another thing as well. So asking yourself all of these questions and getting answers to them, at least for yourself, before you even go to the point of looking for a security vendor to help you out is ideal, because then you can go to them and you can say, this is what I need to protect. These are the attacks I'm worried about. Can you help me with that? And a vendor can come back and say yes or no, or whatever they say. Regardless, you know what you're asking. And then finally, just a couple other quick questions as to the severity of why you need to do this. What could the damage be to my reputation, for my company, for my employees? Are my employees aware of these threats? Are you doing enough to spread around information about threats that may be targeting your employees, especially for whatever industry you're working in, or just general kind of security information? And do your employees know how to avoid these threats? Now, like I covered a lot of stuff here. It was very fast, obviously, but invest in your employees getting some kind of security training, even if it's just like a monthly email or computer-based training or something or video that they have to watch, and just say, yes, I am aware that these threats exist. I am aware of how to identify them. I will do my best to stop them. And I mean, that's all you can really ask of people, right? So let's wrap all this up here. As they told my producer Lily wants me to wrap up. First of all, attacks are going to constantly evolve, and that's never going to change. As the security industry does more to protect users, the bad guys do more to attack users or come up with new methods of attack. And like I said before, the primary method of spreading is through email, which requires a heavy amount of social engineering, requiring the user to actually believe that something is legitimate in order to infect their own network. So education is so vitally important today and tomorrow when it comes to these kind of threats. And then, if you can, please share this video with your friends and family. Like I said, this is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and Malwarebytes, we call ourselves champions of this cause because we think it's so very important to bring awareness. So please share this with anyone you can, and if you have any other questions or stuff, please write them in the chat right now. I'll be doing a little bit of Q&A. Excuse me. And I'll see what I can do. But in the meantime, I mean, thank you guys for watching so much. And please, like I said, spread this around. If you guys like to see this kind of content, please also comment that on our Facebook page or Twitter, whatever you want. Please educate us more, Adam, and I would be happy to do that for you guys. So, question time. Can VPNs actually protect you from malware? Now, this is a claim that I've heard a lot from a lot of different places. I know that VPNs are kind of having a big time right now as far as selling goes. A lot of the videos that I watch on YouTube or commercials that I see or something like that, oftentimes some VPN service will come up and saying, we can protect you from malware, we can stop the security attacks, or the cyber attacks stuff. There is some truth to that, and then there's not, okay? First of all, a VPN does one thing, and that allows you to basically connect through a tunnel to another computer, pretending to be someone else, okay? Looking through the Alice in Wonderland story, through the looking glass, right? It allows you to enter a state where your traffic is not monitored because somebody thinks you're someone else, most of the time, okay? Some VPNs, especially public ones, may not be that secure. Even the Tor network, people know that there are FBI nodes set up in order to monitor activity and track who's using them if they can. And the same goes with other VPNs, especially the public ones. They're used by a lot of people. If you're trying to do something with them that may be, sensitive, keep in mind that the public IP addresses or the IP addresses of a lot of these public VPNs are already blacklisted by a lot of services. So don't do bad things, and maybe use a paid one. That's what I recommend. Not to mention that if you are trying to hide your presence and you don't want someone to know that you're behind a VPN, for instance, we do a lot of security research. Oftentimes that requires us to communicate with malicious command and control servers in order to get more information from them or get more samples from them, and we have to hide our presence, so we use VPNs to do that. But if the attacker was completely aware that we are using a VPN, because they recognize the IP address, they could easily just block our attempt, and we've seen that numerous times. So, but can VPNs actually help you stay away from cybercrime? And to some extent, yes. Like I said, it will protect it would protect your system from being tracked. It'll protect your system from potentially navigating to. Actually, won't do that. A lot of VPN services, they come with things like NoScript and other type of blocking tools. You may want to look into a browser that has that kind of stuff, especially if you're on a VPN, because that may give you some kind of false sense of security. I'm on a VPN, I can't be touched. That's not true. You can be. You can still download files. You're still going to get emails. All these things are still going to happen. And if malware gets onto the system, a VPN is not going to stop that malware from doing malicious things. So as far as securing your anonymity, and as far as making it so that your digital footprint isn't all over the place, I highly recommend VPNs as your sole method of malware protection. I do not recommend only using VPNs, because there's lots of other security software out there that will do a better job. Question 2, is it good practice to use multiple security solutions? So this has kind of been a question that's bouncing around a lot. Obviously, at Malwarebytes, we had a time in the past when we used to say we will be the wingman of your other products, but that time has passed. All right, we are now and have been for a while now pushing ourselves as a single solution. And it's not that we're a single solution that only does one thing. With our products, we have multiple layers that we use, from anti-exploit to anti-ransomware to web blocking to actual detecting malware on the system. There's lots of different methods that we use and lots of layered security measures that we use, all within a single solution. Okay, there are lots of vendors out there that may do the same thing. So if you want, before you decide I'm going to load out 15 different AV products on a single endpoint, look for a solution that has everything kind of wrapped together into one that makes your life a lot easier. Question 3, passwords. Is it okay to use one password for multiple logins? If you're talking about the one, if it's, honestly, there's something I call throwaway passwords. They're just whatever passwords. If you're logging into something that requires no security at all, that you really don't care if anyone accesses, sure, use one of the same password for multiple services, whatever you want. But your email, your banking, your anything else that's vital or secure, or you don't want anyone else having access to, use different passwords. Okay, use a password manager. There is a password manager called 1Password that requires one password to log into it, and that saves passwords for you. It can help generate passwords for you. I highly recommend using a password manager, at least for those highly sensitive and secure, or sensitive and important websites you're accessing. Question 4, how critical is it to make sure you're on top of security software updates? If you asked me that last year, I'd say, it's important, but also we just saw NotPetya pushing out a malware basically through a software update. So it's obviously a difficult question to ask, but as of this year, we've seen at least 4 new exploits for Internet Explorer and Flash. And these exploits are already being weaponized in the wild with a few exploit kits that we actually do see still active. This may lead to a greater amount of exploit kits in the wild, and if that happens, then yes, you need to make sure you are secured and patched, especially stuff that's vulnerable. Windows applications, anything that comes to faults on the system. The operating system itself, in many cases, needs to be updated. Is there always a threat that someone has hijacked the updating process? Yes, but should that stop you from updating? No. Okay, it's a possibility. You could walk outside your door right now and get shot. Will it happen? Maybe. Who knows? But the likelihood of it happening, very little. And it's more important that you go outside and get groceries or whatever you have to do. Pick up your kids. Question 5. How do I keep mobile devices secure? Are there tools for that? There actually are a lot of tools out there right now for mobile devices, including Malwarebytes Anti-Malware for Mobile. I'm sure there's a better name for that, Malwarebytes for Mobile. There's other solutions as well. Anything that blocks scripts, anything that monitors for malicious traffic, anything that even stuff that stops scammer calls. Because if you live, especially in the US, I'm not sure how it is in the rest of the world, but in the US, we have just been bombarded by scammer calls this last year, just all the time. And coming from area codes that you think you recognize or phone numbers you think you recognize, kind of the same thing as the spear phishing attack. Okay, San Antonio's area code is 210. My area code is still 210, even though I live in California, right? So I will get calls from a 210, the same 3 numbers of the first part of my phone number, and then something else, and it's a trick to make you think that this is a legitimate caller, that it's from somewhere you know or you trust, it's local, it's not some scammer, and you pick it up, it's a scammer. So just keep that in mind, that there are more options out there now for actual call blocking of known scammers, so I would investigate those as well. What are the recommended frequency in backing up your stuff? It depends on the stuff, honestly. If it is something that is vitally important that you will seriously be unhappy if you lose, back it up as often as possible. You know, every day when you finish your day, back it up. You know, do a check to make sure it's not infected or there hasn't been some modifications to it, and you can upload that pretty much as soon as you're done working on it for the day. For things that don't really matter, but you still would be kind of bummed about if you lost, like personal photos or you know, a letter or email from someone you like, it doesn't really matter. Backing those things up maybe once every couple weeks or maybe once a month, you know, maybe, and doing incremental backups for that kind of stuff rather than completely overriding these things, because there's stuff that's not going to be changed over and over again. So you're going to want anything that you do modify or add to just be added instead of completely uploading all the files over and over and over again. What's the best way for businesses to secure their networks? I thought I just talked about that. That was kind of the point of this whole thing. So the best way to secure the networks, honestly, security solutions that you trust, education of your employees so they know what to look out for and they can help you in remediating the risk that you have to your organization. Making sure that you do things like segmenting data, segmenting access to data, and putting that really important stuff in a place that's even harder to get to than the easy stuff. You know, we live in a world where breaches and hacks and things like that happen all the time, and we can sit here and pretend that, yes, we're never going to get hit. It's never going to happen to us. Why would it? But the reality is that you should always act as if you are about to be attacked, okay? And because, like I said, the bad guys are always evolving. Their attacks are always evolving. That's not going to change. And so even if we have the top security tools and everyone is completely aware of what's going on and as far as threats go, a single bad guy who has a brilliant idea on how to completely subvert all of that can still come around. The possibility is there. So rather than assuming that you are bulletproof, assume that it's coming and I'm going to make it hard for the bad guy that breaks in. And you can send them down a rabbit hole into a server that's full of nothing but junk or something terrifying. I don't know, whatever you want, in order to just, you know, kind of mess with them if you really wanted to do that. Otherwise, like I said before, just segmenting that really secure information onto a separate layer of security beyond the other stuff. You don't need usually as much space to do that. You don't need the investment you would to secure your entire network for that small thing, but it would require a few extra resources, but I promise you, it's worth it. And then, how can I protect a server from a DDoS attack? Okay, so a DDoS attack, and let's go ahead and use the whiteboard real quick. Probably the last time for today. I hope you guys have enjoyed my drawing. I know I'm not the best artist, but hopefully I'm able to get the concepts across. If you would prefer me to just use PowerPoint slides next time, then just let me know. So, a DDoS attack is basically this. Here is a file server, is a web server, WS, okay? This web server is hosting something important, like a information or a banking website or Amazon, PayPal, whatever you want, right? So a DDoS attack, it's called a distributed denial of service, DDoS. And it's basically when you've got a bunch of infected systems. I'm going to put I for infected, okay? They're all sending a network initiation to this server. So whenever you do actually go on the internet and you write in your browser, google.com, your browser identifies how it gets to google.com, and then when it reaches out to the web server, it says, hello, you know, I want to interact with you. The web server says, oh, cool. Well, let's do this handshake so we can secure, so we can confirm that we are secure, that we are communicating on the same level and everything like that. And then, so this is called a SYN, and this is called ACK for acknowledge. And then your computer sends back something else, which I know this is kind of surprising, but it's called a SYNAC. And it basically confirms that they confirmed. Okay, and at this point, the actual communication happens between the server and your browser, and this is how you get websites down to to your browser. This is how you see them. This is the basics of how a lot of the internet works. Okay, but a DDoS attack, what happens is that you've got this SYN, and it's happening from a lot of different systems. I mean, more than 4. Think about like times 100 these systems, and you've got a real nasty DDoS botnet. So what happens is that these systems send out these SYN packets saying, I want to initiate a conversation. The web server says, okay, cool. And he sends back an ACK. And he does that for every single one. But here's the tricky thing, okay? When the browser, the actual infected system, is supposed to send back a SYN ACK to confirm that we can open up a conversation, it doesn't send back crap, okay? It just completely cuts off communication. Meanwhile, the web server is like let's say that these are all the slots this web server has for outward communications with other servers or other computers, right? All of them are filled up because all of these systems are saying, hey, I want to communicate, but they're not initiating the actual communication. So it's all just kind of stalled. And this runs up the processing speed, the amount of resources being used, and really puts a lot of heavy strain on the processor as well as the network itself. And a lot of times it results in this web server going down and crashing. Okay, so that's what a DDoS attack is, for those of you that may not have known. And the way to stay protected against it, the most common way is that whoever you use for your internet or your hosting, a lot of times they have some sort of DDoS protection that, and I don't remember the exact term, so please forgive me, but it basically distributes the traffic coming in through multiple servers, okay? So to show that on here just real quick, so we've got the attackers, same as before, and we've got the server, right? And then we just have kind of like a border server. It's BS. And web server. There we go. So when these attackers go to the IP address, I think it's this web server, it comes to this guy right here. This guy says, okay, well, you know what? This is a lot of traffic that's trying to go directly to this dude. But luckily, we've got 3 or 4 other servers that are also waiting to take the traffic. So it distributes this load to different kinds of servers, and therefore the DDoS attack is not as effective at overloading one server when it's distributed through a lot of different systems. So this is oftentimes a lot of ways how it works. I know there's far more detail before you go in there and completely yell at me about not getting this perfectly right. It's kind of the basic concept. It's just distributing the traffic so it's not all being dealt with on one system. And then let's see, what is the difference between Malwarebytes Premium and the free edition, and how reliable would it be to start recommending the product to my colleagues and friends? Well, I mean, all right, first of all, the difference between free and premium is free is pretty much our scanner, what we call our anti-malware engine, that basically looks for any malware that's residing on the system at the moment. Okay, it's not a real-time protection. It doesn't stop malware from infecting you. It doesn't block websites. It doesn't block exploits. It doesn't block ransomware. It only looks for stuff that's already on there. So a lot of people in the past have used it as mainly a remediation tool. But the reality is that we've gone far past that, to the point where you don't need to just use this as a remediation tool. Our premium version has the anti-exploit, anti-ransomware, web protection, lots of different tools, lots of machine learning stuff that we're putting in there, lots of developments we're doing on our detection capabilities. So a lot of that is going to be rolled out into our premium product. The engine itself and what the engine itself that we use between our free product and our premium product are the same engine in a sense. They have the same ways of looking for things, and they look for the same things. So it's not like the premium version actually detects malware while the free version just pretends it does. No, it does actually detect malware. But if you want a full security scope and you want to be able to stop the infection before it happens, premium version is what I recommend, and I would recommend to your friends and family as well. As far as its reliability, I think it's pretty reliable, but I'm not really the best person to ask, am I? I'm kind of biased. So yeah, let's see if we have any other questions. Nope, that's it. So folks, I really appreciate you sitting here and watching me and laughing at my drawing capabilities. Next time, hopefully I'll be a little better. Maybe I'll go take an art class. But in the meantime, please stay secure. Take the information you get from this video, share it with your friends, with your family, with your coworkers, and try to make this National Cybersecurity Awareness Month a memorable one and one that you actually get something out of. And like I said before, we have a blog post talking about different efforts being done during this month. Please check them out. Check out the links we have inside of them to lead to a lot of the content that I talked about today. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Be safe. Have a fantastic rest of your week. And I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.